Good morning. A couple of weeks ago, we came across a quote, and that quote came from Roberto Ruiz, Univision's Executive Vice President for Research, Insights, and Analytics. And in this quote, Roberto said, if your brand is in retail, you have to be thinking about what you are doing with the Hispanic consumer. I'll repeat that. If your brand is in retail, you have to be thinking about what you are doing with the Hispanic consumer. This quote was so profound to us that we contacted Univision and spoke with Richard Rusega, Vice President for Business Development. And he enlightened us on two key facts that changed the way we view the Hispanic consumer. One, companies only have 3 to 5 years, yes, 3 to 5 years to capture the lifetime value of the Hispanic consumer. And two, there's a culture shift happening right now within the Hispanic household. You see, Hispanics have transcended right before our eyes. They're one of the fastest growing, one of the most educated, and one of the most income-driven populations in America. So today, we're going to tell you a story. And hopefully, unlike this gentleman here, you actually pay attention. For years and years, companies have missed out on huge growth opportunities that could have taken them from good to great. Well, today, we're here to tell you that the Hispanic consumer is the future growth, and that future is LatinX. I'm Brandon Henson with the Rouse Grocery Company.
And I'm Ray Bridges with Stater Brothers Markets.
I'm Melissa Smith with Albertsons.
And I'm Edgar Jimenez with PepsiCo, and we are The Future is LatinX.
And for the next 20 minutes, we will have a conversation about LatinX. LatinX are the future generation of Hispanics. They are gender neutral, they are physically, digitally, and visually focused, and they are the silent growth engine for all businesses. So in our presentation today, we will highlight the seismic culture shift between Latina and Latino, talk about population growth within Hispanic culture, and provide the CPG and retail industry key recommendations to capture the trillions, yes, trillions of dollars in spending power LatinX has to offer. We mentioned companies only have 3 to 5 years to capture this lifetime value, and that lifetime value starts with the Latina.
To fully understand Latinx, we have to look at them through a brand new lens. And that lens starts by focusing on the Latinx female. More and more today, the Latina is becoming the head of the household. She's doing that by maintaining high-profile jobs. She's becoming the leader of an entire generation now. All of you have heard about Rosie the Riveter, a cultural icon in World War II. She represented all the females that took on male-dominant jobs as the males went off to war. Now, back in those days, this was considered very taboo. But what these women were doing was creating a cultural seismic shift within that generation. What you're seeing here today is that the Latinx female is doing exactly just that. She's creating her own seismic shift within the Latino culture. You've all heard the word machismo, which is male-dominant pride. And the Latina here in the US is surpassing that male-dominant pride by becoming the most affluent of all the household, by holding more professional career jobs than her male counterpart. She's becoming the decisive factor within the family when it comes to purchasing power. The Latina female is literally becoming the industry's financial pipeline. And how is she doing this? Well, for starters, she's pursuing a higher education.
The Latina is not only more affluent and becoming head of the household, but they are becoming empowered to pursue their education before starting a family. The Latinx female is outpacing the males in education since 1980, over 30 years. In 2018, 1.7 Latina females were enrolled in college, while only 1.3 Latino males were enrolled at that time. While they're becoming professionals, more affluent, and the head of the households, but one thing they remain true to is the Latino family unit, and that's the most important unit in beginning stages of starting a family. While they start a family, they remain true to their roots, culture, and heritage. 50% of children born in the US are Latinx, and there's a major shift in births through all ethnicities. The Latinx will account for half the population growth through 2050. And this needs to create a sense of urgency in our industry. This is where we need to capture the lifetime value and plant the seed with the mom and dad. Build their trust, create brand loyalty for their children and future generations to come. With more increases in the birth rates, creates the Latinx to have more spending power and indexing higher in multiple categories than any other Latinx in the United States. And this graph heavily demonstrates that. As you can see, they're indexing higher with 12% in cereal, 15% in gas, 16% in apparel, 16% in proteins, and climbs to 20% in produce, 20% in dairy, 21% in technology, and almost 50% in footwear. And that's not where it caps. The Latinx is spending 105% in baby products. If the Latinx was considered a country, they would be considered one of the top 20 economies in the world. That is an undeniable growth engine for our industry.
Let me explain the impact of Latinx in the United States. Right now, there's about 61 million Hispanics living in the U.S. Did you know 29 million Hispanics are the ages of 18 and 49? They're not typical first-generation Hispanics. They're different because they were born here. There are many Hispanics that are third and fourth generation that don't even speak Spanish, but they love their heritage, but they want the American dream. Remember, the females are becoming more educated in the workplace. They're having a shift in their home where the mothers are not staying at home all day because they're going to work. This means she won't have time to make big dinners during the week. She'll be going to the market after work and picking up spaghetti and sauce and looking for more convenient meals to feed the family because she still wants to bring the heritage together and have them at dinner every night. She wants to keep that culture. She's going to be having the big dinners on the weekends when she has more time. But I want to break down the Latinx future growth even more. I know you're sitting here thinking, I know all this. You probably do. But you know what? After I looked at the numbers, I really realized they're growing faster than I thought. Like Missy mentioned, every 1 out of 2 will be Hispanic baby out of all the births. By 2030, there'll be 75 million Hispanics in the United States. I don't know if you noticed, but that's a growth of about 15 million more in 10 years. By 2040, there'll be 87 million. 12 to 15 every 10 years. By 2050, 100 million. If you continue on the map, you will see a shift cross. Will there be more Hispanics in the United States than there are non-Hispanic whites? There's some culture experts that we spoke from Univision and others that shared one fundamental value that shook the whole team. If we do not invest in Hispanics in the next 3 to 5 years, we will lose them as a lifetime of value from mom and dad. We'll never capture them as a shopper. You need to think about that. Here are 2 maps comparing 2017 and 2020. When you look at the map of 2017, you can see the density population with the Hispanics. Yes, it's true. It's close to the border along the Sun Belt, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, where it's the heaviest. But if you look at the map of 2020, you can see the Sun Belt just in 3 years of California and New Mexico and Arizona have gotten darker. Yes, you might see some more migration going to the middle of the country and the other west, but I want you to know that's because they're looking for the American dream. They're looking for a better way with cheaper housing, more jobs. But I want you to realize by 2030, if you're in California where we do business, it's going to be heavier, dense than it is now. What are you doing about it? But I want to break down the ethnicity so you can understand better who you're dealing with.
As Ray mentioned, the Latinx population continues to grow at phenomenal rates throughout various regions of our country. But what's more intriguing is where the growth is coming from. The younger generations are driving this growth. Let's take a look at the map here. 64% of the growth of Latinx comes in the form of Gen Z and millennials. And because of their extended life expectancy, they bring 17 more years of effective spending power relative to their peers. And just like any other millennial or Gen Z, social media platforms, social media influencers play a huge role when increasing brand awareness with this group. So how do we compare it, how do we capture this group as well as the rest of Latinx? Is understanding that the American culture and Latinx culture are intertwined and should be respected as such.
The Latinx culture, pride, and being third and fourth generation has really embraced the American dream. If you look at the first picture, it's the family having fun together at a picnic, enjoying that American dream. Let's move to the next slide. They're going to a football game, but they're expressing their heritage because they want to have fun, but they want to be themselves. If you look at the other side, they bring their culture to all of us because they're Americans. But I want you to remember that Latinx is very loyal culture to their people and where they shop. Here's a fact from Kantar. Like I said, the ages between 18 to 49 want to protect their family culture while capturing the American dream. But also by saying that, I want to remind you, now that the women are getting more educated, what they have to offer for the future.
What if I came to your 2021 financial planning and told you that I have a consumer that has 1.4 trillion purchasing power? Well, here's the reasons why you'd want to listen. The Latinx are the fastest to grow over a six-figure annual income. They're outpacing every ethnicity in household earnings by 300% in the last 19 years and are projected to grow an additional 38% in the next 5. This purchasing power creates opportunity for us retailers that we need to capitalize on now. With purchasing power creates opportunity, and that opportunity is $7.5 billion on the table for the Western region grocery industry. The Latinx make up 36% of the WFC geography, and we're only capturing 19% of the Latinx dollar. If we were just to increase that share and capture 5 basis points, that's $3.75 billion on our top line revenue. Increase it by 10, $7.5 billion to your top line revenue. And my question to you is, what are we doing about it? Do we really have the right assortment in our stores? Do we have effective marketing to reach this consumer? Do we have the right reflection in our stores of their community? Our CPG and grocery retailers need to partner and come up with a plan to capture their heart, build trust, and create brand loyalty to close this gap of $7.5 billion to our industry.
$7.5 billion on the table for us to go and fight for. Before we go there, let's talk about the consequences of not recognizing a clear opportunity. Here in front of you are 4 companies of well-documented cases that failed to recognize a long strategic opportunity that they had in front of them. Blockbuster laughed at Netflix when Netflix asked for a merger. We all know how this story plays out. One company is still in business, the other one is not. Excite failed to see the value in Google's future predictions. They had the opportunity to purchase Google for approximately $750,000 only. They passed up on that opportunity. Today, Google is worth over $147 billion in assets. Amazing. A massively catastrophic mistake by Excite. You can see the other examples here like Xerox and Kodak. You know about those stories. All of these companies have one thing in common. They failed to recognize the moat. So you may be asking yourself, what does this have to do with Latinx? Well, today in our time, for our industry, Latinx represents that exact same opportunity that these 4 companies faced many years ago. Latinx is your moat. Latinx is your pipeline for financial success. But listen, we don't want to talk here about dwelling and poor opportunities that were missed. We want to talk about you building the future blueprint of how to capture an entire generation. In 1981, the Dodgers did just that. The Dodgers brought in Fernando Valenzuela because they had a vision to have somebody connect the Latino community, which was growing at the time, with the Dodger organization. And in 1981, Fernando Mania was born. Fernando became that connective tissue between the growing population of Latinos and the Dodger organization. Listen to these stats. These are staggering. In all the away games where Fernando pitched, they averaged above 13,000 fans per game. The Dodgers sold out 92% of all their games when Fernando pitched at their home games. And they also broke the Major League Baseball attendance record after Fernando came on board. That's amazing. That's the power of the Latino loyalty, but also the Latino spending power. But let's talk about then how you then can create your own Fernando Mania within your own industry. Here's key ways to capturing the entire lifetime value of the Latinx generation. But before we go there, let me just quickly remind you, as the experts that we spoke to reminded us, that our stores must look and be prepared to accept this population by having the right assortments and the right products within your stores. You have to be able to meet the now very busy mom with her weekday demand with convenience food and fast food. You also need to meet the other cultural piece of this mom, which is the prepared food for the weekends, where she maintains the heritage with big family gatherings. The cultural experts that we spoke to gave us 3 specific hints on how to build this lifetime value. One of them is by first being very phygital. What does that mean? Well, with an average of 7 social media applications, Latinos spend double the amount of time versus non-Hispanics on social media. This is the intersection where you as an industry and the Latino community can have a lifelong conversation. Phygital meaning that you bring the physical world of how the culture acts to the digital environment. Second, you have to drive ubiquity, being always present within this community. Here's an example of what HEB did with Eva Longoria as bringing her on as a Latina influencer within this community. As you can see here now, Latina is a welcoming party, a network that invites other Latinas to come into HEB. HEB is clearly already ahead of its time, and they're applying some of these tactics that we're talking about today. Lastly, have a very strong representation within your industry. Do your stores look like their surrounding community? Do they look like them, speak like them, act like them? Do they have the same values and traditions? Do they understand what goes into preparation of a Latinx food plate? And then also invite Latinx members into your boardrooms. Bring them up the executive ranks. These people can be the guiding policy behind your Latinx strategy for future growth. Listen, we heard today from these experts that we only have 3 to 5 years to capture the lifetime value of an entire generation. You do that by connecting to the female Latina who's running the head of the household. Listen to this. You influence her and create habitual habits with your brands. She will then influence her child. 50% of all children born right now in the US are Latinx. That means that the Latina has the ability to influence 50% of an entire population and then build consumption habits through your brands. Connect the dots here. If you connect with the Latina, she will influence 50% of the entire US population tomorrow with your brands. You cannot afford to miss out on that opportunity. 50% of the population is up at stake now. You have the opportunity to make a choice today to either be the next blockbuster or to build your own Fernando Mania. You're going to hear 5 really good presentations today, but only this presentation captures an entire generation with a deadline behind it of just 3 to 5 years. I ask you to please make your choice. When we're done presenting with you today, I ask that you please set up a Zoom meeting with your marketing teams and begin to work on your Latinx long-term strategy to capture the lifetime value of Latinx generation. On behalf of the Latinx team and the future generation, I thank you for your time. Please be safe and stay healthy.